Hello, welcome back to the Null Electronics podcast. It is in fact me, your boy, Hayden, aka Null. Thank you so much for joining me again this week. Hey look, I just got off the phone. In fact, the video phone. It's amazing, isn't it? Nowadays we have video phones. I remember when I was a kid, we just had normal phones, and I thought, jeez, it's going to be sick when we have video phones. And now I can't get the fucking video camera off me. Oh, what I'd kill for, what I'd do just to get the landline back in. You guys know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I was on the phone, the video phone, as I mentioned not 30 seconds ago, to Lachlan Gould, aka Magoo. Now, you might know Magoo, you might not know Magoo, but I'm telling you, you should know Magoo for the work he's done in the Australian music industry in a production capacity and audio engineering, mixing capacity. He has worked with some of Australia's biggest names in fucking sick bands. Not only did he produce the first 3 Regurgitator albums, I believe he mixed them as well, but he's also worked with bands like Powderfinger, ever heard of him? Midnight Oil, ever heard of him? Gerling, ever heard of him? How much further? Jebediah, ever heard of him? And of course, he worked with Operator Please on their single, Just a Song About Ping Pong. We talked about all of these bands and his work with them. Oh, Custard. Oh, shit. You know what? I got to splice this in here. There's this band called Custard. They had an album called Loverama. You may know the lead singer or main songwriter, I think, of that band nowadays. He voices the father in the very popular kids program, Bluey. Anyway, they released a record back in 1998 called Loverama. The lead single, I think, or the successful single from which is called Girls Like That Don't Go For Guys Like Us. I'll play a little bit of it now so that you're across how that song goes if you're not familiar. Anyway, I had this question written down for Magoo because he recorded and produced that record, and I didn't fucking ask him, so maybe he can hit me up on Instagram. I'll read it out verbatim. Here we go. I was in primary school at the time of that album's release, that album being Loverama by Custard. At that time, I had a school principal who went by the name of Greg Thompson. Greg would start every single whole school assembly by playing Walk Right In. Do you know that song? Then I'd pause and I'd wait for Magoo to answer my question. Let's say he does know the song. But I'll just go on. You know, it goes, walk right in, sit right down, baby, let your hair hang down. You know, it was really apt because you'd be having 400 odd kids walking into a massive reverberant hall, making a bunch of noise, and then he would sing to us, walk right in, as we were doing, and sit right down, and ostensibly shut the fuck up. Anyway, I also remember this principal teaching me incredibly rudimentary music theory in one of these classes, possibly my first ever music lesson. It is my belief, and this is, then I'd look down the barrel of the camera right at Magoo, and I'd hold his eye contact, because this is the big, sort of the gotcha moment of the question. It is my belief that Greg Thompson, the principal of my primary school, is in fact the brother of Glenn Thompson from the band Custard. And then you'd see his pupils dilate as he connects the this fact that this truth bomb that I've just dropped on him. And then I'd say, can you get a message to Glenn and please ask him to confirm that? I have always wanted to know for sure. Now, sadly, I did not hit Magoo with that hard-hitting question in our interview, maybe because it's a big block of text in my list of questions for him, and I sort of, it's very hard to hold a conversation with someone whilst you're trying to read a massive paragraph of bullshit. So I guess I went ahead and asked him mainly questions that pertain to his profession and his history in music, which I think most people will probably enjoy more than knowing about whether my primary school principal is related to the drummer in the band that he recorded one album from and probably can't even remember working on. We'll find out next time I invite Magoo onto the podcast and hit him with the gotcha. But for now, let's jump into my chat with Lachlan Gould. There's some really interesting tidbits in here. Stay tuned, especially for the chat about how Gerling got Kylie Minogue onto their song, The G House Project. The answer to that question may shock you. Okay, without further ado, let's get into it. Goodbye! I've got Lachlan Gould here, aka Magoo, amazing, long-time industry professional here in Australia, producer extraordinaire, audio engineer extraordinaire. Lachlan, thank you so much for joining me on my podcast and making time today.
No worries, Hayden. Thanks for having me and showing interest in what it is that I do.
Absolutely. I sort of, the way this came about is I was talking to Quan from Regurgitator on a previous, episode of the podcast. And, we connected shortly after over Instagram, and I was like, oh, wow, I'm talking to this guy who produced a bunch of records from my childhood that I really, really love. And we'll come to some of those a little bit later. But I guess just to give the audience an understanding of where you started, you came out of the Brisbane music scene. Some of your earliest recorded works, as I think as a producer, were with Powderfinger on their Mr. Kneebone EP. Have I got that correct?
Yeah, that was Regurgitator were before that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the first sort of production work, or what was the first band that you sat in a producer role with?
Well, see, the word producer in Brisbane was a bit of a... Like when I first started, I had no idea what a producer does. I just looked at records and saw the name on there and went, that's what I want to do, even though I don't know what they do.
Right.
And in Brisbane, because we didn't really have the apprentice model that kind of existed in the big capital cities. You just kind of felt your way. So I would more call it recording. I worked a lot with a local band called the Dream Killers. Mm-hmm. And probably the link there is they were managed by Paul Curtis, who manages Regurgitator to this day.
Gotcha.
And probably the first recording that I did, the Dream Killers got noticed, and they toured nationally, and I was their live sound guy for a while too, for 2.5 years, and there's a lot of stories in that, but we probably won't get there. But the first recording that I did that gained a lot of attention was a band called Pangea, which Ben from Regurgitator was in, Dave Atkins and Jim Sinclair, and they were really they were really big in the scene. Like Powderfinger looked up to them. At like Parables for Wooden Ears by Powderfinger, you can blame Pangea. A lot of people blame Seattle and all these kind of things, but Pangea they had really good musical chops, really techie kind of band. But it just seemed to make sense. It didn't feel like they were showing off. It worked in the scene at the time, and everyone loved them. And I was lucky enough to work on an EP of theirs. Well, actually, there's a little bit of a story in there. I'll go there. They were lucky enough to get a song on a Ruart compilation.
What now?
Ruart.
Okay, I'm not familiar.
Ruart was a label, I think, set up by In Excess's manager.
Okay.
Probably as a tax write-off, I don't know. But they got paid some money to do a song for a Ruart compilation. So just local bands in Australia, and they had to record a song. And it was kind of like, it was a few $1,000s, but it was more money than they had ever had in their career. And they were like, okay, Magoo, let's record this song. And we recorded a reggae song in about 4 hours. And then they're like, right, let's start our EP. So for the rest of that night, we recorded drums and guitars. We didn't do the bass for some reason on 4 more songs. And basically those 4 songs became their second EP. And that one kind of was just, got me some attention in the local scene. It probably got minor Triple J play, but not much, yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't, when you say in the local scene, you don't just mean within Queensland, Brisbane, Australia-wide, they were being noticed?
I kind of do mean local, really. Yep. But, there was a little bit of notice nationally, but it was more like people like Michael Parisi, who ended up signing Regurgitator, was a big fan. And famously, he got sent a tape with Pangaea on side A and Regurgitator on side B. And he kind of went, oh, what's this Regurgitator thing? I like that.
This might be a bit of a thorny question, but how did the guys in Pangaea sort of respond when all of that sort of, where the signing went to Regurgitator and then you have the long history of Regurgitator after that?
Well, it is a thorny question. And not thorny for me. Like I was fine through it all, but not everyone in the band took to it well.
Yeah.
But Dave Atkins, the drummer, he played in Wolfmother for a period. He was in a band called the Resin Dogs.
I didn't want to say the wrong thing. I love the Resin Dogs. I was like, is that the dude from the Resin Dogs? Yeah, sick. Okay.
Yeah. In between that, they had a band called Elevation that was just instrumental.
Okay.
So there's this kind of it was, not everyone took it very well, and I don't want to go into the personal stories of people in the band, but I'll just say
it would make such good podcasting, Lachlan.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want to do that. Well, I would say, hang on, I just have to let my dog in.
Yeah, no worries.
And
sorry. Is that a CR78 behind you?
Yes, it is.
Oh, sick.
Cool. 68, actually.
68, okay.
So it's not programmable.
I see.
Same thing, but not programmable. Sorry about the dog.
That's okay. So, sorry, you were about to reveal all the horrible stories tore apart Pangaea?
Not everyone took it well, but I will say that it probably lit a fire under Dave Atkins to go on and do something else and try and be better. They were very competitive.
Yeah, right.
But, we all have our journey, and some of us, the journey is a bit bumpier than others.
Right. Yeah, full on. So you recorded those first, is it 2 or 3 EPs with Regurgitator?
2.
And how did the Powderfinger thing come across to you? Because that was sort of, they'd established themselves, I think, already, and suddenly they land in your lap as to produce an EP for them. Was it 95-ish?
Yeah, well, actually, come to think of it, I think the Hamburger EP by Regurgitator was first, but around that time when I was mixing for the Dream Killers, that ended after about 2.5 years, and basically there was a bit of an opening to mix for Powderfinger, so I did that for 12 months. And during live sound, live sound. And during that period, I did a number of B-sides for singles, and things like that. And the Mr. Kneebone EP was actually recorded while we were on tour.
Yeah, right.
We were in Melbourne. It was done in 4 days. That was my first time in a big studio. With a big SSL console. Like in Brisbane, we had really shitty studios. But I think I'd already done the Hamburger EP, and then I did the Powderfinger EP, and then Regurgitator got signed. So they were signed on the end of the Hamburger EP, but essentially they recorded that and paid for it themselves.
Gotcha.
Warner gave them a bit of money, and we did some overdubs on it, probably with the goal of sonic degradation, not really trying to make it sound more commercial. It was trying to do the opposite.
Yeah, right.
But I guess that gave Warner some ownership over the recordings.
Gotcha.
So, but it was like they weren't signed when we did that. So then the Powderfinger EP came along, and then Regurgitator was signed, and we did New. I'm recording lots of local bands
Yes.
in amongst
Yes.
all of this. Yeah.
These are the headlines, sort of.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
And how this is look. Was this kind of early? Would you say this is early in your career with regard to recorded material? Or
Yeah,
have you been doing it for a while?
I did my first paid recording in September 1992.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay. So a few years under the belt.
a few years under the belt, but it was all very, like I did do a course, an audio course. Well, it was a studio course, but it was like 20 weeks, 3 hours a week, at a studio in the Target building in the Valley, which was kind of a renowned rehearsal space and junkie hangout.
Yeah, right.
before the Valley was gentrified.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, when you pulled into these sort of big SSL style studios in Melbourne, did you feel like you were out of your depth? Was that a new sort of thing, or were you comfortable by that stage at being in such an environment?
Certainly not comfortable. Out of my depth. Yeah, I would definitely say I was out of my depth.
I can imagine it would have been fun though, and exciting.
Yeah, it was real fun. I'm pretty sure I could go through my career and count off the records that finished with a 24-hour day. I'm pretty sure the Mr. Kneebone EP was one of those.
Yeah, right.
Where I just stayed up for a whole 24 hours to get it finished. Because, we had a lockout booking. And we had 4 days to record and mix 5 songs.
Oh, so you had to mix it in there as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm on a, automated console that I've never used before. So I had a lot of help from the assistant engineer, whose name's Andy Baldwin. And he was great help and had a really lovely attitude. Never did his ego get in the way and sort of go, this guy knows nothing. He was just helpful all the way through.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Now, with Regurgitator, they're a band that, to me anyway, it seems like you've sort of had this very long relationship with. You've done a number of records with them. I do wonder, do you feel like you shaped that sound in any way as the ring-in producer for a lot of the records?
I would kind of say genuinely it was a group effort.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the thing that made me work with the band was we just all had this one intention, and that was to just fuck shit up.
Mm-hmm.
So we just really wanted to try something different. And although I hadn't really been doing it that long, the band pushed me a lot. Martin, I can remember Martin many times saying, more bass, more treble, just trying to push something to its limits.
Yeah.
And I was only too keen, where I think very much the attitude at the time in Brisbane for local recording people was, oh no, you can't do that. That's breaking the rules. And I was all about breaking the rules. And, so with that kind of attitude, the more recordings we did, the more we just kind of let loose. And if I had an idea, we'd run with it. If Quine had an idea, or Ben or Martin, we just ran with it. So, I would generally say that it was produced by myself and the band. I was not in there going, it goes like this. And we never had long pre-production.
Mm-hmm.
There's very little pre-production through most of the recordings, particularly the successful ones. So it was very intuitive, and in a lot of ways, I think it was our naivety in the studio with the technology that really made it something special. We really didn't know what we were doing. But we knew, I think in the end, we knew what sounded good or what sounded different. And once we struck upon that thing that was like, oh, this is a bit unusual, but kind of cool, that was kind of the secret and the sauce, really, pushing it to that point.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere or heard on a podcast you were on that a lot of the songs weren't written when you went into the studio for Unit. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So
I think
they were being written and recorded and produced sort of at the same time.
Yeah. And this is all before the digital audio workstation.
Right.
So that's quite an undertaking. But the record company. Now this, I know there's certain people that will have conjecture over this, but the record company made us do demos for two playing, and doing demos with Regurgitator is kind of like they would record a song one way and it would sound great, maybe a bit messy and not kind of quite right to release, but then it's like, we need a proper demo of this song. Well, they'd go, we've already recorded it this way. We're going to record it a completely different way. Like a song like Social Disaster on two playing, I couldn't count how many different versions they'd recorded of that song. Right. And like one reggae and one punk rock and one, hip hop, and then, whatever it was on the record, it's hard to know what that sound is.
Is that how you end up with some of the tracks from the EPs sort of getting dub versions on two playing?
That was kind of record company trying to, this song had Triple J airplay, so let's do another version of Blubber Boy, and
gotcha.
The Couldn't Do It Happy Shopper mix and things like that.
Yeah.
That was a bit du jour at the time, and it was also, the band didn't want to completely give into that and just put the old version on. They were like, let's do a new version,
So it sounds like a band that maybe never really suffered from demoitis then.
They had a different suffrage. It made them just completely do a different version every time. So it was kind of after the two playing experience, I think everyone was a bit tired of that, and they had two demos for Unit. I think it was Black Bugs and Everyday Formula.
Okay.
And we basically went in and recorded those, and then the band started writing more songs. And it kind of would be Ben wrote two, Quan wrote two, so we'd, record those, and then it was Ben wrote one, Quan wrote one. And so we would record and then mix, which was quite an undertaking for me, but, I just went with it.
Yeah. Did you find that stressful? Like, were you worried that you weren't going to get there, or?
Not really. I think it was just more, the studio we were in was pretty shitty. It was just a big open warehouse space. And,
okay.
I love recording in all sorts of places. I prefer to be somewhere like that than in a, perfectly acoustically designed studio. I find it more interesting, except in the control room, the place where you're making critical listening decisions.
Totally.
It's pretty difficult when you don't really know what you're hearing.
Yeah.
So I had this routine. I didn't live too far away, and at the time, the mixes were being recorded to a DAT tape, to a digital audio tape, kind of like little mini VHS tapes. And I had a DAT Walkman. So,
wow, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, they were expensive.
Weren't DAT tapes cassette size, like VHS size?
That's an earlier digital before DAT tape. There was a beta VHS, PCM, I can't remember what they called that format. PCM digital or something like that. And U-matic tapes. It was kind of these early digital concoctions.
But what you had was more like an answering machine tape.
But crossed with a videotape. Right. So I would record the mixes onto a DAT tape, and then I'd jump in my car and drive home and listen with my portable DAT player at home. And because my stereo at home, I really knew, that's where I listened to all my music. I knew what that sounded like. And I'd go there and I'd make notes, and then I'd run back to the studio and tweak the mixes. So, that was kind of my process, yeah.
With some of the acts that you worked with, like your Regurgitators and your Gerling, a lot of what they were doing, especially on Unit and the Gerling records you worked on, they were moving into more of an electronic music, or they were taking on an electronic music influence, I think, for sure. With some of them more, you were just talking about how digital audio workstations weren't a part of the recording of those records. How does something that's almost purely an electronica song, how do you insert yourself into the process of production, you know? I mean, I can imagine if a band's sitting around and they're playing a song and you're like, oh, you know, can we tweak this or should we add this into the multi-track? How does that, I'm imagining one of the band members coming in with a song that's on their Atari or whatever they've produced it on and saying, here's my song. How do you get your fingers in there and shape that?
Well, on Unit, it did end up becoming kind of like myself and either Ben or either Kwan. So Kwan would often go home and work on the tracks. So
what kind of a setup is he doing that on back then?
Well, so what we had, we both had Akai samplers, S3000s.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the song formerly known as has a good story, in that we recorded it as a live band, live drums. He'd just bought the Nord keyboard and he'd sequenced the bass line. And he was like, I just bought this keyboard. This is the first thing I sequenced. I don't know if it's any good. Let's play to this. So they played to that. So it was locked, so at the time we had ADATs and we had a Mac Quadra running Cubase.
We're getting incredibly technical on
this
podcast.
We are.
Sorry for listeners who are not technical minded, but I am loving this. Please go on.
So it was ADATs with a computer running beside it with a sequencer, which ran the Nord, and everyone's playing to that. And we recorded this acoustic version. And Kwan just went off into a room. I probably chucked it on a DAT tape and he's listening to it. And he wrote all the lyrics. And then we recorded we recorded all the vocals. So it was, double tracked and you did the high falsetto. I even think that was when we adjusted the pitch on the ADAT to get the slightly chipmunky kind of sound.
Is that all that is? Really?
Like basically slow it down, record it, and then play it back at normal speed. It's an old trick. So we recorded that, and this might have been a 2-day process. I think it was probably 2 days, and I put a rough mix down. Kwan went home, and he comes back in the next day, and he's like, "Oh, this is shit. I hate it." No, I think I felt my shoulders slump because we'd done a lot of work on it. It wasn't just whack up the mics and chuck something down in a couple of hours.
Yeah.
But then he said, "But I love the vocals. They're just so good. Can you run them off on a DAT tape for me?" Mm-hmm. So that was the essence of it. Then he goes away for a couple of days. And Ben and Martin, we probably recorded Mr. T or one of the more band jammy type songs. Sometimes Ben would play guitar. Sometimes Ben would go, "Oh, hey, I got this song. Kwan, can you play guitar on it?" But Kwan came back in basically with the song formerly known as, where he sequenced the drums. He'd put every line into the sampler.
Every like line of vocal.
Every line from the DAT tape. So it was a stereo recording of like 4 tracks of vocals.
I see.
Yeah. I would have put an effect on it, and he took that as well, put every line into the sampler so that he could trigger, like on the one beat of every bar, could trigger that line. So basically, and he, we played it and we all loved it. This is great. But then that's when I kind of get my grubby little hands into it. And I think I added a kick and a snare to the drum beat, but the drum beat he had sounded amazing. And then I would do things like I would cut the samples of the vocals up a bit smaller so that I could tune the vocal. There'd be little bits where I'm like, oh, that's a bit flat there. So I could, in the sampler, just pitch it up a little bit. So I got in with a fine-tooth comb and just kind of tidied it up. And then there's a little thing, there's 2 bars of guitar in there, maybe in the second verse, that's from the original recording. Because to play all of this, I kept using the ADATs to set off the sequencer. I don't want to go too techie here, but I very well easily could. So, the other thing is, when he brought in the sequence, he also brought in his sampler. So I had 2 samplers stacked up.
Right.
They had 8 outputs, so I could spit out 16 outputs. The Nord was separate, and and I was triggering other stuff, so I kind of could build up a multi-track that I could mix, get inside and mix. So a lot of that song was, I guess I produced the vocals. Quan produced the track and I mixed it, and
A couple of questions there. Like, were you guys ecstatic when you sort of were coming to the end of that? Like, did you? Oh, we fucking got something here. This is. I still remember the first time I heard that song as like a young kid, being like, "The fuck is this? This is huge!" Like instantly, this is a hit to like a 10-year-old kid being like, as much as a 10-year-old kid can be like, "This is a hit." I was like, "This is a hit." Did you guys feel that?
Well. One of the things that record did that I did for a long time after was because they only had the 2 songs when we started. So we had Everyday Formula and Black Bugs. And by the time I'd mixed those 2 songs, that was when we felt, oh, we've got something here. And I kind of really liked that process of actually seeing songs to the finish, because it made everyone a bit more. Before that, we were all like, what the fuck are we doing? Is this going to be any good? What's the direction? Mm-hmm. But we got those done and mixed them, and it was like, there's something here. Song formerly known as and I Will Lick Your Asshole, they were right at the end. They were a fair way down. We would have finished maybe 7 or maybe, probably 6 or 7 songs by then. So it just sat in amongst all the others, and, it sounded great, but it was,
There wasn't any more jubilation than any of the other songs.
I don't think so,
Was it a surprise when it kind of became the hit that it is?
Well, see, that's the thing. Your 10-year-old self wouldn't have... It didn't really... It's probably endured more than was a hit instantly.
That's interesting.
Like Polyester Girl was the song that charted.
Uh-huh.
So, and that was the hit from the record. Song formerly known as was like the 4th single. I guess it was...
Do I just have a really warped perception of it? Like, is it just that 10-year-old kid being like, the fuck is this? Or that is a big song from Regurgitator's catalog nowadays, sure, right? Or
it's definitely the song. It's it's the last song in the set. It's the one everyone wants to hear.
Yeah,
but it was in the top 10 in the Triple J Hot 100 that year, but it didn't actually sell a lot of copies. And back then, it was like if the song was on a compilation, that meant that it was. Really had some traction, and Polyester Girl was that song, not really song formerly known as.
Yeah.
It did well, but it didn't go gangbusters. It's just kept going. Kept going. When they did the recount, what was that, 2012, and it went to number 2, still didn't knock off Pretty Fly for a White Guy. When they did the recount for 1998.
I'm sorry, I just can't get behind that. The Offspring will always have a place in my heart. No. I'm being facetious. We're doing a lot of Regurgitator talk, and your career is more than just Regurgitator. So, I do just have to ask. So you're saying that that's the Nord lead.
It's a Nord lead, and that was the first thing when Quan turned it on. Turns on his computer. That's what he sequenced.
That's cool to know.
Yeah.
Very cool to know. This one's more of a broad question about yourself. Did you have heroes in the world of production and audio, and do you have heroes in that world now? And how might that have changed?
Oh, well, yes. I've always had heroes. People that I look up to sonically. Maybe you don't look, you listen up.
That's it.
Like I love the Beatles and George Martin. And what they achieved, what the Beatles did for recording, it really can't be done again. And
there's still quadraphonic sound. Surely we can.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Well, there is Dolby Atmos mixes of some of their later records.
What's your hot take on that technology?
I don't think it'll last for music. It's great for games, great for film, but music, it seems to be a bit of an add-on. And I don't think the people care. Yeah, so that's hot take.
Sorry, your heroes though?
Heroes, George Martin and the Beatles. I've always loved Chad Blake, who was more tied to Mitchell Froome in the early days, but he sort of has come on to be He's a bit of a sort of sonic auteur in that he has a real sound, and it's really quite dirty. So he's gone on and he mixed AM by the Arctic Monkeys, and he mixed the Black Keys.
Okay.
Big record, and he's done plenty of big things, but he's always been someone that I've looked up to. I love Dave Fridman, the Flaming Lips guy.
That
MGMT.
tracks. I feel like I can hear that in your, and what I assume your production style is. I mean, it's funny, isn't it, to try and understand what a producer's sonic footprint is, because you've worked with so many different bands, and they don't all fall into the same. But I think, your Regurgitators, the Spider Bait record you did, and the Gerling records, they all have some kind of unifying gel, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, there probably is, and it's probably all tied together with a little bit of distortion,
Right.
which was kind of something that I always liked.
I
always liked that edge.
There are some wild, filter sweeps and overdrive on that Spider Bait record. I was listening to that today, and wow, this thing's fucking loud.
Well, that was Wit had he'd bought I guess it was kind of like an early, like an Ableton Push type thing, that it was in its own box, had its own hard drive and its own sequencer.
Okay.
He'd bought that, and he just loved this box making these kind of dance beats in it. That was kind of I take no credit for any of the dancey direction of that record. It was mostly Wit.
Yeah, right. Interesting.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite records from a production and engineering standpoint? Is there something that you put on your best speakers and go, fuck, this just sounds amazing?
Well, like I'm a sucker for like Massive Attack and Portishead and that sort of 90s kind of thing.
Yeah.
I must admit I do love the Beatles remixes that George Martin has done. I've got the White Album on vinyl.
Okay.
And it just sounds phenomenal.
Wow.
I actually didn't realize that most of my vinyl collection sounded like shit, because they're poor quality pressings, really flimsy vinyl. But then when you get 180 gram vinyl, and it's just been like, the mixes just sound just like they did. He hasn't really done anything except made it a bit more expansive. So I do love that. But like I said, I love the Flaming Lips, and the Soft Bulletin is one of my favorite records, because it just sort of takes you on a journey. So sometimes it's not all about the sonics; it's about the story, I guess. If I'm in the mood, that's more what I'm going to listen to, and if it sounds good along the way, I'm there.
Cool. Yeah. We were talking. Actually, I want to ask you about Midnight Oil. You worked on their '98 record, I think. Redneck Wonderland, is that right?
Yeah.
The title track, the first track. It has a bunch of break beats in it. Did you convince Midnight Oil to put like slam and drum and bass break beats in them? That's really sort of stood out to me.
No, so I had nothing to do with that track.
Okay, my bad. I do apologize.
Oh no, it's fine. So Midnight Oil actually happened concurrently with Unit.
Okay.
So I'm trying to think of.
So this is not like a flow-on effect of I've won ARIAs and I'm producer of the year kind of thing. Let's get him in to work on Midnight Oil. No.
Midnight Oil loved Two-Plane.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and they were like, let's get that guy to do our record.
That's cool.
So, in short, I made a record with Midnight Oil that got rejected by the record company.
Okay.
The band loved it. I loved it. Well, we thought it was as good as, like maybe Lovers, it certainly was delivering the message that they wanted to deliver.
Yeah.
And basically the record company rejected it, and then the band went off with Warren Livesey, who's their long-time producer.
Okay.
He did Diesel and Dust and Blue Sky Mine, and he did their comeback records of the last couple.
Mm-hmm.
So basically they reunited with Warren. he did the song Redneck Wonderland, which I hadn't. I heard the riff. It was called Riff X because again, it was another record where they didn't have any demos, and you know, like Midnight Oil was a different beast to Regurgitator. Like one, we're in a large format studio. Like I remember rocking up to Sing Sing, and there's a semi trailer out the front, and I'm going, what's that? What's going on? Oh no, that's Midnight Oil's gear. It's like, oh, what do you mean? Yeah, they're gear. There's a second one round the back, and I'm just like, holy fuck, what's going on here? And you know, they had things like, you know, I've got this original 60s Vox, but I actually also like this reissue from the early 90s. So it's like Jim and Martin both had 4 Vox amps that came off this truck, and they had these guitars that were like, oh, it's in the warehouse. I haven't used it for a while. And it's like a 1957 Stratocaster. I'm like, I could sell that guitar and buy a house.
You're giving me anxiety here.
Yeah.
So, and also, like, you've got choice paralysis there in the studio. You got so much crap to choose from.
Well, like, in short, it's just having stuff around, and then when a vibe took them, it was like, let's record. You know?
Okay, I see.
So, there wasn't really a lot of choice paralysis. It was just kind of, let's just play around with sounds, and then when someone had something, they went with it. But we're working on tape. There was samplers here and there, but most of it was live performance. You know, like Rob Hurst was a machine. You know, Vale Rob Hurst, he was incredible because he put everything into every take. When you consider that, you know, that probably 60% of the record, as it stands, is what I recorded. They're basically jams.
Right.
It's pretty crazy. But yeah, in short, we made a record. It was pretty dirty. La me, I guess. Angry. Warren Livesey came in and he did Redneck Wonderland, re-recorded a couple of songs that I did, Concrete on My Mind and one other, overdubbed on a couple of songs that I'd done, and then a few of my mixes sort of got on there.
Okay. So there are remnants of that original record.
Yeah.
It's interesting. One of my favorite records that you've worked on is When Young Terrorists Chase the Sun by Gerling. That was a big record for me. How did that partnership come together? How did you link up with Gerling?
Well, Gerling, I was working a lot with a band called Not From There, who, like, I really love Not From There and the records that we made together. And Not From There they toured a little bit with Gerling, and you know, I guess it was from going to shows. We met each other. I was aware of what they were doing, and like basically they did all I just mixed the record.
Okay.
So
you've got a production title on there though.
Yeah. There was a little bit of arrangement and bringing stuff together. But you know, I would, again, we all produced it together, but really I didn't really do too much recording. We did do some recording, and I kind of mix up When Young Terrorists Chase the Sun and Bad Blood a bit.
Yeah, okay.
It's hard to, because they were both mixed around Christmas, like 2 years apart.
Interesting.
So it's hard to distinguish one from the other.
You were sharing the most non-story in the world about the G House project, which features Kylie Minogue. I'd love for you to tell the audience about the story about how they got Kylie Minogue on one of the best tracks on that album. I think you said there is no story. Essentially, is my
no. They asked her and she did it. Like basically, they sent her the song and she sent back a vocal. And you know,
what's Kylie Minogue's clout like at that point in her career? Is that maybe like 2002?
Yeah, like
it's before the big sort of comeback record, I think, for her.
But I think it's after Where the Wild Roses Grow.
Okay, sure, yeah.
So she'd had done a few collabs around that time, I think. But yeah, I think it was before. What was the song? Something Princess.
Oh,
the record. I can't remember. She did have that comeback record before.
I mean, I'm thinking of la 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 la.
Oh yeah, you're thinking of no. She did have a comeback record there in the early 2000s. We'd have to Google it. We don't want to bore the listeners with that.
I'll look into it.
I would say Kylie Minogue's always kind of dipped in and out of the zeitgeist over the years, you know. And whether she was in or out around the G House project, I don't know. But basically, she got asked, you know, probably they were signed to Festival, and at the time, I think Festival was still tied to Mushroom, and she signed to Mushroom. So I think it was just, you know, would have gone from one A&R person to another, and she just sort of said, yeah, sure, I'll put something on this. There might have been some ideas of a vocal, but I think she wrote most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great track.
And the story is, you know, there's a bit of studio tape somewhere, and I wrote Kylie on it. And
yeah, nice.
I've pushed up a fader that had her name on it, and that's it.
And was that the first and only time you were able to write Kylie on the mixing disc?
Yes, it was.
There's still time, though. Maybe the next record.
Maybe.
Now, this is a stupid question. Do you? You've just told me that Bad Blood and Young Terrorists, they kind of get a little bit muddled for you. I have this very distinct memory of Gerling being interviewed on Video Hits, I think, at the time of release of Who's Your Daddy, which was one of the singles off Bad Blood. And I remember, perhaps jokingly, but in my memory it was very supercilious, one of the members, I think it was Darren, being asked, how did you do that vocal effect on Who's Your Daddy? To which he responded, and I think he was being very serious, that is a complete and utter secret. I cannot tell you how we did that. I'm sorry, my lips are sealed. Now, I'm sure these days we can very easily download a plugin that might make that sound. But are you able to finally put to rest this thing that's been sitting in my brain since I was a 12-year-old kid watching Video Hits?
It was...
Sounds like he's singing into a rotating fan.
Yeah. It was a Boss... I can't even... I'm trying to think what... It was like a vocal changer or something.
Okay. Does what it says on the tin.
Yeah. There's actually a Regurgitator song called Disco Sucks, maybe. Did we use one on that? It was a box. I never owned one, and every now and then it showed up, and it just made a really stupid sound.
Well, there you go, Darren. I finally got it. I finally got it out of your producer. Now I know the answer.
Yeah,
that was calling Video Hits immediately.
That was a bit du jour at the time too. Like, sure,
yes,
didn't reveal that it was auto-tuned. They said it was a Digitech whammy pedal, and you know, it was everyone was scratching their heads. And,
That's so funny. I mean, as a dude, like fucking around on early DAWs as like a young teenager. I remember I was like collecting this sample library of drum hits and stuff like this. And I remember like I would guard it with my life. Like I didn't want my other friends to like get my sample library. And now it's just like, man, every sample in the world is available to anyone, any time of day. Like, why are you being such a dickhead about it?
Yeah,
it's I'm a professional dickhead, so.
Yeah, the secrets of the studio were very tightly guarded, but now you just jump on YouTube and hear heaps of people telling stories. And
was that
secrets.
A genuine thing? Was there a little bit of competitive sort of?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah,
you know, like, and your only information source kind of was trade magazines. So when that story came out about Sure and Believe, it was like, it must be the Digitech whammy pedal.
Yeah, right.
But not the whammy pedal. It was some it was like a vocoder pedal.
Yes.
That Digitech made, and
I think I know the one.
Yeah, you didn't have to put a MIDI keyboard into it. You could put any instrument into it, and it would track off that.
Right.
Can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, right. You also produced Jebediah's self-titled album, which had the single "All Fall Down" on it, which people who remember that track, a huge focus of that song is a bagpipe line. Did you have anything to do with the decision to put bagpipe on that track?
Yes, unfortunately.
What do you mean, unfortunately?
It was just more, I think the idea was, it was like Chris had played that guitar line, and I can't remember if it might have been Chris or someone in the room. Were like, it sounds like bagpipes, and I'm like, well, let's put some bagpipes on it.
Hell yeah!
And basically, it just grew from that. Whether we were recording, we recorded. Where did we tracked that record at Mangrove. Record company wasn't around that much, but I think when we were mixing, we might have floated the idea when we were recording, and then by the time we were mixing, it was like, the bagpipes were coming in, and
hell yeah,
yeah.
Have they had a go at you for that since then? Where you say you regrettably almost that you include what's the regret here? I mean, it's an obnoxious sound. The bagpipe is a loud, obnoxious sound. We all know that, but
it is. But
right place, right time. It works.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm just wary of these things being slightly annoying. But I guess we kind of got away with it on that, and it gave a bit of, Jebediah. They're a great band. They really, great performers, play together really well. But I think at that time that they made that record, they were a little bit tired. They'd been, on the treadmill for a while.
Yeah,
and I think we made a pretty honest record. But maybe it was missing that bit of narrative, something to hang on to, and that was just it, and I think it ended up being, one of their biggest songs behind Leaving Home,
Yeah.
It's as far as sales go, etc. Yeah.
Have you put bagpipes into a song since?
No.
Okay.
No.
Maybe on the Kylie record.
yeah.
You also produced the debut single for Operator Please. Now, they would have been very young at that time. This is just a song about ping pong. Did you, what was approaching young, how old were they roughly when you were working with them?
I think the drummer was 15.
Right.
He was the youngest. I think one of them, maybe Amanda, the singer, was 18. But they were basically between 15 and 18, mostly. Only one of them, I think, was an adult. One of their sisters had to come, to accompany the accompanying adult.
What was that experience like working with, I presume this was the first time you would have been working with people that young in a while. Did you have to temper your usual approach?
Yeah, no, maybe, I'm a pretty patient person.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a little bit of, showing them the ropes in the studio. And at the time, I probably had an overly complex way of working. I had a 2-inch 16-track Studer.
Okay.
It was at the time when the old Pro Tools interfaces didn't sound that great.
Okay.
But a Studer tape machine sounds amazing. So I used to record all my drums and bass to tape and then put it in the computer and overdub from there.
Yeah.
And it just gave this extra thing to the recordings. So, it was recorded to tape. So full credit to them. That's not easy to do when you're 15, 16 years old. I remember the drummer, I forgot his name. Someone was telling me about him just last week. That they play in a band with him now. And it's like, oh, wow. I haven't heard that in so long. But I remember him trying some fairly ambitious fills and things like that had to be tempered a bit in a kind of simple pop song.
Yes, yeah.
And I remember, the bass player, I can't remember his name. He was not so crash hot.
Okay.
So you just had to be patient with getting the parts down and lots of drop-ins. And it was, old school dropping in on tape and... maybe with the bass, I might have done that in Pro Tools so that I could move bits around a bit more easily. I can't remember. But yeah, I remember driving down the coast to pick them up in my van and working out that I'd had my license longer than most of them had been alive. I was like, okay, I've gone up another level here,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the story with them? I'm trying to remember, Did they have connects in the music industry, or did they win Unearthed or something like this? I don't quite remember Or did they just build a very big following?
They
kinda
did
came
have
out of nowhere.
They had two managers who were pretty connected, and between them, they got them signed.
Mm-hmm.
They recorded their debut album. I can't remember who with. They couldn't so when I recorded Ping Pong, it was part of a 4-track EP. Again, like Regurgitator, it was before they were signed, kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and they got picked up off the back of that EP. But they re-recorded Ping Pong, and they were like, "Oh, it's not as good. We'll put the original on it." So it was good that I kept the lead single,
nice.
even though I didn't get the album.
And then I think the next record, which I remember some of the singles I quite liked, was produced by the guy from No Doubt, if I'm remembering correctly. Maybe the bassist from No Doubt. I need to look that up and confirm.
Sounds likely.
Sure.
Yeah.
That there's those connections working for them again. What you mentioned before with regard to Jebediah, the label were not popping in quite so often. What's it like to have the label pop in? What does that mean? Like, do you have? Is it sort of like when the teacher walks back into the room and you need to pretend you were working? What's that experience been like for you?
Well, it's those times where I actually do experience being an old school producer, where you are the interface between the commercial outcomes and the record label. You're the interface between them and the artist. So, John O'Donnell, who was the A&R for Jebediah, was fantastic. Very nice person. And we had a great relationship, but he's under that Sony umbrella. And Sony, I always found to be quite... they were the ones that used to like being the most manipulative. They get in and want to change everything. The Midnight Oil record got sort of... parts of it got redone. I didn't get told about it till it was finished, till I got the finished copy.
Wow.
Things like that. I did a Skunk Hour record back in the early 90s, and, again, some of my mixes, most of my mixes got rejected. I got a couple of mixes on that record, but it got remixed. Right. And a lot of this stuff happens and they don't tell you about it. And it's like, well, hey, I thought I was the producer and I wish I could have spoken to the mix engineer and said, hey, could you push up that microphone that that sounds really good? And they forgot about it, So Sony, I've always, I'm not the most commercial person, and have always felt like the most commercial label to me. So I guess I'm always the wariest. But John O'Donnell was a little bit different. He worked, it was his label, Murmur, that he brought to Sony. So he had somewhat of some control, but there's still that lingering vibe of this major commercial entity around it. But he was great. But with back to Regurgitator, like Michael Parisi was, it's the only time where I've worked within the major label system where an A&R person has given the band full autonomy. You just do the music, tell me when it's mastered. Didn't even want to hear it before it was mastered.
Wow.
And he would just put it out.
Now, is that a lazy employee or just a trusting man?
He liked the band. He signed them because he liked them, and he trusted them completely. And, it's amazing that we got to make 2 records and 2 EPs under that kind of creative leadership. Like, he did do everything the band wanted, and he loved doing it. But after that was kind of when the wheels started to fall off, and various kind of things happened over the story. But, the record company and the A&R person does have can have a big influence, whether they're touching things or not. They're still influencing it, because at the end of the day, they're financing it. They're the ones that are signing the checks, that are getting the budgets approved with their line manager or whatever. It's a business, and they're trying to make those business decisions. And yeah, it's a very interesting job, and there's a lot of characters out there doing that job. Yeah, yeah.
I talked to Quan about this on this intersection of business or commerce and art. Were there times where you were, what's the right word, where you were pleasantly surprised by some of those interjections or requests from the business side of things, or did you always sort of staunchly realize, man, like it was better before, or we don't want to do that?
Not like the overwhelming kind of memory of it is exactly what you said. It was better before you interjected. But, you know, to be honest, at times they gave great comments. At times they had great ideas, and most of the time I'm sure I worked with some A&R people that were musicians, but they certainly never came across as musicians. And they gave that great lay person perspective. But invariably it was annoying. And, you know, like de jour in the 90s was not to keep the vocals loud. It was, you know, I listen back to some Regurgitator stuff now and I'm like, I just wish I'd pushed the vocal up a bit. You know, that's partly, you know, Quan and Ben's ego and not being confident singers. But, you know, if I was mixing them now, I would have made the vocals louder. And A&R people are always on my back. Can you push the vocals up? Okay, let's get a vocal up mix, you know.
Yeah.
That is the vocal up mix, you know. So, yeah, their ideas, I'll probably put it at 50-50.
Okay, that's not bad. 50-50.
Yeah, you know, yeah.
So nowadays you are teaching at the Uni of the Sunshine Coast. In this field, right? Audio engineering, recording, production industry is what kind of stuff are you teaching there?
Well, mostly production and a bit of sort of entry level songwriting. You know, the industry always sneaks its way in there. It's always intertwined. But yeah,
what are you teaching these students that about potentially getting into the quote unquote industry, or about making production or engineering their profession in this current climate?
Like probably the main thing is when you do these courses at university, like we say this all the time. I say we, you know, you're right.
Yeah, sorry.
When I say we, I'm talking about myself and my colleagues up there, Andy and Bryony. You know, we tell them the degree is not going to get you a gig. You don't walk into a venue and go, oh, look, I got a degree. Give me a gig. You've got to have music. You've got to have something to play them. And probably the biggest asset in doing like the course that we have is that you get 24/7 access to the studios. And I know if I had that, whether I knew what I was doing or not, I'd be in there all the time, day and night. And you know, if I think back to my career when I started, it was a lot of hours. I did a lot of work. Like I said, you know, that Powderfinger EP, I can remember staying up 24 hours. I can remember staying up for 48 hours at the end of the 2-playing record.
Oh my God.
I can remember staying up for 24 hours at the end of the art record. You know, and there's others where you just do what it takes, and sometimes sleep just doesn't come into it. I know it's not a very healthy way to do things, and I certainly could not do it now. But it's more getting across that if you love it and you have that motivation to apply yourself, you've got the tools here, just go for it. And, you know, like we all have the tools, like, you know, that we're doing this podcast on,
right.
You know, laptop, microphone, you know, a door, away you go. You can start making music, but it's that motivation and wanting to do it and putting in that time to get a good result. You know, that's kind of what it's all about. And it's sort of training your ears. You got to know when to stop. And like I said, it's probably that's probably the thing that I've contributed the most as a producer is that, well, I often, if I'm mixing something, I'd often push something too far and the band would go, oh, hey, Magoo, that's a bit too full on. Let's pull it back a bit. And that'd be it.
Yeah.
That's the mix, you know? So it's all about knowing those points when it's good and when you got to keep working on it. And that takes time to learn that stuff. So I guess that's, in essence, the big thing that we start with and we finish with the degree and with the teaching.
Have you ever been sort of blindsided by a student doing something you're just like, how'd you do that? That's do you ever come across any surprises or?
Yeah, there's some great students up there, and like with YouTube and a fairly simple DAW, you can make some pretty incredible stuff these days, and the students are always blowing me away.
That's cool.
Definitely. But it's it's a lot of work to get there in the industry. I do feel lucky that I was in the right place at the right time in the Brisbane scene, and but you don't. I'm not a big believer in luck. It's more there was the opportunities and I took them. Like I can still remember like recording Midnight Oil and them telling me, oh, you should hire a Fairchild. And I'm like, what's a Fairchild? And, a Fairchild is this old vintage compressor that, the Beatles, it was strapped to tracks 3 and 4 on the tape machine for the Beatles. So everything went through the Fairchild. And it's this old valve compressor, and it cost, back then it was $200 a day to hire, when the studio I worked in Brisbane was $300 for the whole studio. So they're telling me, you got to hire this box. And I go, yeah, sure. I had no idea how to use it, what it did. I didn't know the history of it. And I just, whatever.
Yeah.
Let's jump in. Let's do it. So I guess it's that spirit of adventure.
Yeah. But more from a the industry is very different now to the way it was back then. I mean, like getting your foot in the door as a working producer for a full-time job like it was back then. I mean, like it sounds like your career was, all contract work, this band and this label and piecemeal things come along. Does it still work that way for your students who are maybe hoping to get out there and do that kind of work?
It does still work that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on the board of the Music Producers and Engineers Guild, which is, interesting because I can sort of see a little bit more how a lot of the industry works around the country. And from what I can tell and the various surveys that we've done, and we're doing others, that, a lot of people have to do another job to augment. I think, I've been very lucky that music production was my primary source of income for a very long time, 25 years.
Wow.
And I wish it still was, but, like just responsibilities and families and mortgages and kids and, and I enjoy teaching. So it just kind of all came along. And research. I think research is probably the bit I enjoy the most.
That's cool.
But yeah, it is different to when I started, but the opportunities are still there. I think there's more music than ever being made. I don't want to bring up the dirty word of AI, but I just did. But, I think that bubble will burst shortly. Mm-hmm. And it'll just do what any new technology has done, take away the fringes of jobs,
Right.
MIDI didn't kill live drummers.
Was that a thing? Was that a thing that people were concerned about?
Oh, definitely. In the 80s, everyone thought that drummers were going to no longer be a thing.
Wow.
Yet all my favourite hits, you go through Devo and, Cars by Gary Newman or whatever, they've all got live drums on them. But they're full of synths.
Everything's synthetic except for the drums.
Yeah. So, AI will affect the industry, but I don't think it's, there's more people than ever making music, and there's still a lot of opportunity out there. I'm optimistic anyway. That's
a great place to end the conversation on, I think, a bit of optimism. But I'm not going to, because I do want to know about the research side of things. That's something that I'm not super familiar with, what you are researching and what you're doing on an academic side. So what's exciting you about that?
Oh, well, there's a lot of things in there. I've been involved in a project with a First Nations elder up in Gympie, Uncle Kev Starkey. and we just won an award at the MPEG Awards for a research project we were doing called the Music Producers Development Program, where, like, surprise, surprise, the music studio is full of people like me, basically middle-aged white guys. And there's a bad gender imbalance, and that's been researched for a long time. But I've kind of worked out that there's also any minority group, there's not really much representation. So we developed this program called the Music Producers Development Program, where we got some First Nations people down to the studios at the Sunshine Coast, and we got some First Nations mentors in. Moss McGregor, who was a student of Andy, Briney and mine from QUT. He's a First Nations Ableton teacher. He came in, and with some other people, Trent Starkey and Soju, who's a DJ. Basically, they mentored these 5 students, and then we all had a big yarn at the end of the day and gathered some data, and we're basically putting out papers from that. So we've got one paper that I'm just doing the final proofs on now. From that, there's another paper that I've started. And I've been doing some research with the folk at ANU. Again, some of it diversity-based, and some of it, we just had a paper published, myself and Pat O'Grady, on recording studio websites, where we're just using that as a way to capture data about how Australian recording studios, what they think that they're doing by, what they're putting forward. And yeah, there's been some interesting findings from that as well. There's a lot I could keep talking for ages about research, because, like I said, it's the part that I kind of like. I get to give back a bit to, I've really enjoyed my time as a music producer. I still love it. And the research is a way that I can kind of give back and share my knowledge and explore it. Like, when academically, I find there's not a lot of practitioners doing the academic work. So I'm often reading academic stuff and going, "Oh, what do you read? This is bullshit," And then next minute you're writing a paper, trying to correct everything.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah,
well, that's very noble. The ANU, I'm in Canberra. The School of Music, I think, was about to close down, and now I think it's still going. But I actually did work experience there in their studio facilities, which were beautiful. I think they still are beautiful. I don't know if they've been hit by any funding cuts. But I think I was probably about 15 at the time, and I did that terrible thing where on Friday, last day of my work experience, studio, the guy who taught the classes there said, "Hayden, we're going to, we're doing a big recording in the main room Friday night. You should stick around as late as you can and be there for this experience." I decided to go home and get a case of beer and drink with my friends that night. I didn't do it, and a little bit regret that, to be honest. But we've got lovely facilities here. It's nice. We have that for students.
Yeah, it's still going strong. And I believe the production course is kind of growing at ANU.
Great.
It's going in the opposite direction to the more Western art music kind of one-on-one teaching that's kind of gotten the axe, but it's on and it's off again, sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay. So the production
popular
stream
music, the contemporary music thing is still going strong. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Good to know. Lachlan, thank you so much for your time. It's been illuminating. It's been great to, a little bit strange, honestly, to chat to someone about all these records I have on CD and used to listen to all the time as a kid, and get to sort of peer behind the curtain a little bit. It's been lovely. Is there anything you want to plug before we finish this podcast up?
I think I've just, I've plugged my research. I've been working a lot with my wife lately. Her name's Tylee. She was in a band called Got a Cola, but I think she's had a long kind of solo career, independent artist, not really well known, but I've been mastering like a 30-year kind of collection of some of her songs. So that's what I've been doing lately. Look out for it. Kind of folky, DIY. She's a she's my wife.
That's beautiful.
Got to support my wife.
Of course. Oh, that's lovely. Does the project have a title yet?
Just Tylee. She's going to call the compilation Entirely. So her name is Tylea, and pronounced Tylee, like Kylie.
Huh.
Yeah. So that's
awesome.
Hopefully that'll be out soon.
Cool. Yeah. We'll look out for it.
Yeah.
Oh man, what a chat, Lachlan Gould, aka Magoo. Thank you so much for joining me on my podcast.
Thanks for having me, Hayden. It's been a pleasure.
Worries. What a lovely chat. I'm sure you agree. Lachlan, thanks for coming on the podcast, mate. It was a pleasure. It really was just awesome getting to hear some of the stories behind some of my favorite records. Thanks again to the listeners out there. I have a Buy Me a Coffee link in my bio or biography on my Twitter. On my Twitter? I don't use Twitter. On my TikTok and my Instagram. One person has bought me a coffee recently, so I got $5 sitting in that Buy Me a Coffee. I'd love for more people to dump some in there, so feel free to if you're enjoying what I'm doing. All right, I'll be back next week. Bye.